You ever notice how people love a good smile? It makes them comfortable, keeps things neat, predictable. They don't ask questions when you smile. They don't look too closely at what's cracking underneath. And that's the trick, isn't it? Because the strongest people you'll ever meet, they're the ones smiling the widest, while everything inside them is quietly falling apart. We're told strength looks like control, like composure, like never letting them see you bleed. So we learn to wear it, a grin stitched together from pressure, disappointment, and all the things we were told to just get over. And the world applauds that, calls it resilience, calls it bravery. But nobody talks about what it costs to keep smiling when every part of you wants to break. Nobody warns you that sometimes strength isn't about holding it together. It's about how much you can endure while pretending you already have. People see a smile and they relax. It's almost automatic, like a reflex they don't even think about. You show your teeth, lift your cheeks just enough, and suddenly the world decides you're fine. Funny how that works. No one leans in to ask what's really going on behind it. No one tries to read between the lines, because a smile is permission. It tells everyone around you, don't worry, nothing to see here. And they listen. They always listen. But what they don't understand is that a smile can be built the same way a wall is built. Layer by layer, carefully placed, hiding everything it's meant to protect. Every disappointment, every sleepless night, every moment where things didn't go the way they were supposed to. It all gets tucked away behind that expression. You learn how to hold it there, how to keep it steady even when your thoughts are anything but. And the more you do it, the better you get. And the more you do it, the better you get. Practice makes perfect, right? Eventually it becomes second nature. You don't even realize when you've started lying. The world loves that kind of lie. It's clean, it's easy, it doesn't demand anything from anyone. Because the truth is messy. The truth makes people uncomfortable. If you were to drop the smile for even a second, if you let the cracks show, you'd notice how quickly the room changes. Eyes shift away, conversations get awkward. People suddenly don't know what to say. So you learn not to do that. You learn to keep the performance going, no matter how heavy it feels. And it does get heavy. Carrying pain in silence has a weight to it, one that doesn't show on the surface, but drags you down all the same. It sits behind your eyes, in the pauses between your words, in the moments when you're alone and there's no one left to convince. But the moment someone walks in, there it is again, that smile. Right on cue, like it's been waiting for its turn. It's almost impressive, really, how quickly you can switch it on. People will even admire you for it. They'll call you strong, say things like, I don't know how you stay so positive, as if positivity is something you just woke up with one day. They don't see the effort it takes to maintain that illusion, the constant push to keep everything buried where no one can reach it. And why would they? You've done such a good job convincing them there's nothing there. That's the strange part. The better you get at hiding your pain, the more invisible it becomes. Not just to others, but to yourself. You start to believe the act. Start to question whether what you're feeling even matters. After all, if no one else sees it, if no one reacts to it, maybe it's not real. Maybe it's just something you need to get over. Something you should be able to handle without making a scene. So keep smiling. Not because you're happy, but because it's easier. Easier than explaining. Easier than risking being misunderstood. Easier than watching people pull away when things get too real. And in a world that prefers comfort over honesty, that smile becomes your safest disguise, the one thing that lets you walk through everything without anyone ever stopping to ask what it's hiding. There's something almost amusing about the way people talk about strength. They dress it up in nice words, make it sound admirable, something everyone should strive for. Stay strong, they say, as if strength means keeping everything locked away where no one can see it. As if the real measure of a person is how well they can suffer without making anyone else uncomfortable. And the strange part is, we believe it. We buy into it so easily. From the very beginning, you're taught the rules. Don't cry too much. Don't complain. Don't let it show. Because the moment you do, the moment your voice shakes or your eyes give you away, the world starts to shift around you. People get uneasy. They don't know how to handle it. So they offer quick fixes, empty reassurances, anything to patch things up and return you to that acceptable version of yourself. the one who smiles, nods, and says, "I'm fine." And when you play along, when you swallow whatever's weighing on you and keep going like nothing happened, that's when the praise comes in. Suddenly you're strong. Suddenly you're mature, resilient, inspiring. It's almost like a reward system. The quieter your pain, the louder the applause. You learn that if you want approval, if you want to be seen in a positive light, you have to keep things hidden. You have to master the art of silent suffering. But here's the catch. No one likes to admit this kind of strength isn't really about you. It's about making things easier for everyone else. When you keep your struggles to yourself, you're not burdening anyone. You're not disrupting the flow. You're fitting neatly into the expectations that have been set for you. And people appreciate that. Of course they do. It's convenient. What's inconvenient is honesty. What's inconvenient is someone saying, "I'm not okay," and actually meaning it. That kind of truth demands attention, demands effort, demands empathy. And not everyone is willing to give that. So instead, the system encourages you to keep quiet, to deal with it on your own, to prove your strength by how little you ask for. Over time, it becomes a habit. You stop reaching out. You stop expecting anyone to notice. You convince yourself that this is just how things are supposed to be, that everyone is carrying something, so why should you be any different? Why should you make noise about it? So you carry it, day after day, moment after moment, adding more to the pile without ever setting it down. And the world keeps rewarding you for it. They admire your composure, your ability to handle things, your refusal to break under pressure. They don't see the cracks forming underneath, the quiet exhaustion that builds when you're constantly holding everything in place. Because as long as you're standing, as long as you're functioning, as long as you're smiling, everything must be fine. It's a clever illusion, really. You're praised for enduring, for pushing through, for never letting it show. And the more you're praised, the more you feel like you have to live up to it. You can't slip now. You can't suddenly admit that it's too much, because that would mean everything they believed about you wasn't true. So you keep going, not just for them, but for the image they've created of you. The strong one, the unshakable one, the one who never needs help. And somewhere along the way, strength stops being about resilience and starts being about silence. Not speaking up, not breaking down, not letting anyone see the weight you're carrying. Because in a world that rewards quiet pain, the loudest cries are the ones that never make a sound. People have this comforting little illusion that pain is temporary, that it fades away if you just give it enough time. They say things like it'll pass or you'll get over it, as if pain is something that politely packs its bags and leaves when it's no longer welcome. But pain doesn't work like that. It doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. It sinks deeper, settles into places no one else can see, and waits. At first, you feel everything. It's sharp, loud, impossible to ignore. It interrupts your thoughts, your sleep, your sense of control. It demands attention. But that's the stage people notice. The part where your pain is visible enough to be acknowledged. And even then, there's a limit to how long anyone is willing to watch. Eventually, the patience runs out. The sympathy fades. And that's when the real lesson begins. You're expected to move on, so you adapt. You take all that noise, all that chaos inside you, and you start pushing it down. Not because it's gone, but because you've learned it's not welcome. You bury it under routines, distractions, responsibilities, anything that helps you function without falling apart. And from the outside, it looks like progress. It looks like healing. You're not talking about it anymore, not reacting the same way, not showing the same cracks. To everyone else, it seems like you've moved on, but underneath all of that, nothing really left. It's still there, just quieter, less visible. It shows up in subtle ways, in the way you hesitate before trusting someone, in the way certain memories make your chest tighten without warning, in the way your mind drifts back to places you'd rather forget. It lingers in your reactions, your habits, your silence. Pain has a way of weaving itself into who you are, becoming part of the background you carry everywhere. And the strange thing is, the more you ignore it, the more permanent it becomes. Because when something isn't acknowledged, it doesn't get processed. It just gets stored, locked away, stacked on top of everything else you've chosen not to deal with. And over time, that weight builds. Not all at once, not in a way that's obvious, but slowly, quietly, until it starts affecting things you didn't expect. You might find yourself reacting too strongly to something small, or feeling completely numb when something important happens. You might not even recognize why certain things bother you the way they do. That's the buried pain finding its way back to the surface in pieces. Not as the original wound, but as echoes of it, distorted, reshaped, harder to trace. But no one sees that part. Because from the outside you're functioning. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You've checked all the boxes that signal you're okay. And that's all the world really looks for. As long as you're not visibly struggling, as long as you're not making it obvious, your pain becomes irrelevant to everyone but you. So you carry it. Not because you want to, but because you don't know what else to do with it. You've been taught to move forward, to keep going, to leave the past behind. But the past doesn't stay behind. It follows you, quietly, patiently, shaping the way you see things, the way you respond, the way you protect yourself from feeling it again. And maybe that's the darkest part of it all. The realization that pain doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't need to be visible to be real. It just needs a place to stay. And if you keep burying it, keep pretending it's gone, it will settle in deeper, becoming something you don't just carry, but something that quietly carries you. They have a very specific picture in mind when they talk about strength. It's clean, controlled, almost polished. The kind of person who never falters, never hesitates, never lets anything slip through the cracks. Someone who can take hit after hit and still stand there, unshaken, like nothing ever touched them. That's what they admire. That's what they point to and say, that's how you're supposed to be. So you try to fit into that picture. You learn to keep your voice steady, even when it wants to break. You learn to hold your expression in place, even when everything inside you is screaming to let go. You convince yourself that if you can just contain it, whatever it is, you'll be stronger for it. That control becomes your goal. That silence becomes your proof. And the world reinforces it. Every time you choose not to speak, not to react, not to show what's really happening inside, you're rewarded for it. People trust you more, respect you more. They see you as reliable, stable, someone who has it all together. And that validation, it's addictive, because it tells you you're doing the right thing, even when it doesn't feel right at all. But what they call strength is often just suppression dressed up in nicer words. It's not that you're unbreakable. It's that you've gotten really good at hiding the fractures. You've learned how to push everything down so deep that even you start to lose sight of it. You tell yourself you're in control, that you're handling things, that you don't need to let it out because you've already dealt with it. But dealing with something and burying it are not the same thing. The problem is, suppression doesn't make anything disappear. It just delays it. It holds everything in place for a while, gives you the illusion that you've mastered it. But underneath that control, there's pressure building. Every emotion you ignore, every thought you push away, every moment you refuse to acknowledge, it all adds up. And no matter how strong you think you are, there's a limit to how much you can contain. Still, you keep going. Because letting it out feels like failure. It feels like losing that image you've worked so hard to maintain. The moment you admit you're struggling, you risk being seen differently. Not as strong, not as composed, not as someone who has it all figured out. And that fear keeps you quiet. It keeps you locked into that role, even when it's tearing you apart from the inside. What's ironic is that this version of strength leaves no room for being human. It doesn't allow for doubt, for vulnerability, for moments where things don't make sense. It expects perfection in how you handle imperfection. And the more you try to live up to that, the more disconnected you become from what you actually feel. You start measuring your worth by how well you can suppress your emotions, how little you react, how quickly you can move past things without letting them affect you. And on the surface, it looks impressive. It looks like discipline, like resilience, like power. But beneath it, there's something missing. Something real. Because true strength isn't about pretending you don't feel anything. It's not about shutting things down or locking them away where they can't be seen. But when you've spent so long being rewarded for suppression, it's hard to recognize the difference. It's hard to tell when strength stops being about growth and starts being about avoidance. And that's where the illusion holds the tightest. Right in that space where you think you're in control, where you believe you're stronger for staying silent, when in reality, you've just become better at carrying things you were never meant to hold alone. There's this quiet rule no one says out loud, but everyone seems to follow. You can struggle, sure, just don't let it show too much. Keep it contained, keep it controlled, keep it presentable, because the moment it spills over, the moment it becomes real and visible, everything changes. Suddenly, you're not strong anymore. You're something else. Something people don't quite know how to deal with, so you learn to hold it in. You learn to swallow the words before they leave your mouth, to blink away the tears before anyone notices, to steady your breathing before it gives you away. And every time you succeed, every time you manage to keep it together, it feels like a small victory. Like you've passed some invisible test. Like you've proven that you're capable, that you're in control. But what happens when you don't? What happens when it slips, even just for a moment? When your voice cracks, when your expression falters, when everything you've been holding back finally finds a way out. That's when the room goes quiet. That's when people start to shift, to look at you differently, to pull back just enough to create distance. Not always out of cruelty, sometimes just out of discomfort. But you notice it. You always notice it. And in that moment, it feels like failure. Like you've broken some unspoken contract. You weren't supposed to let it get that far. You weren't supposed to lose control. So you start to believe that breaking down is weakness, that it's something to avoid at all costs. You replay it in your head, wondering how you could have handled it better, how you could have kept it hidden just a little longer. But here's the part no one wants to admit. Breaking down isn't a flaw in the system. It's a response to carrying too much for too long. It's what happens when everything you've been pushing away finally reaches a point where it can't stay buried anymore. It's not a sign that you're weak. It's a sign that you're human. The problem is, we've been taught to fear that humanity, to see it as something that needs to be controlled, minimized, hidden. Because once it's visible, once it's out in the open, it can't be ignored. It demands attention, demands acknowledgement, demands care. And not everyone is ready to give that. So instead, the narrative shifts. It becomes easier to label it as weakness than to confront what it actually means. You start to internalize that. You start to believe that your lowest moments define you, that they somehow erase all the strength it took to get there. You forget that holding it together for so long required just as much effort, just as much endurance. All you see is the moment you couldn't keep it in anymore, and you let that overshadow everything else. But those moments, they're honest. More honest than the smiles, the reassurances, the carefully constructed version of yourself you show to the world. They don't hide anything. They don't pretend. They reveal what's really been going on beneath the surface, what you've been carrying without letting anyone see. And maybe that's why they feel so uncomfortable, because they strip away the illusion. They expose the truth in a way that can't be easily dismissed. You can't dress it up, can't smooth it over, can't pretend it's not there. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's real. Still, you're told to avoid it, to stay composed, to stay strong, to keep everything in check, because that's what's expected, that's what's rewarded. And anything outside of that, anything that looks like losing control, gets pushed into the shadows, labeled as something to be ashamed of rather than something to be understood. There comes a point where the act starts to slip. Not all at once, not in some dramatic collapse, but in small, quiet moments you can't quite control. A pause that lasts too long. A response that doesn't come out the way you planned. A look in your eyes that doesn't match the smile you're trying to hold in place. And for the first time, you realize that the mask you've been wearing so perfectly isn't as secure as you thought. You've spent so long building it, shaping it into something convincing, something reliable. It's been your shield, your identity, your way of navigating a world that doesn't know what to do with anything real. And it worked. It worked so well that even you started to believe in it. You started to think that maybe this version of you, the calm one, the unshaken one, the one who never lets anything show, was the real one. But the truth has a way of pressing through, no matter how tightly you try to contain it. It doesn't shout, it doesn't force its way out all at once. It lingers, it nudges, it waits for those cracks to appear, for those moments where your guard drops just enough for something honest to slip through. And when it does, it feels unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, like you're stepping into something you've been avoiding for far too long. At first, you resist it. Of course you do. You try to patch it up, to reinforce the mask, to remind yourself of everything you've been taught about staying strong, staying composed, staying in control. You tell yourself this is just a phase, just a moment of weakness, something you need to fix before anyone notices. Because if they see it, if they really see it, then everything you've worked so hard to maintain starts to unravel. But holding it together gets harder. Not because you've become weaker, but because you've carried it for too long, without letting any of it breathe. The weight doesn't disappear just because you've ignored it. It builds, it shifts, it finds new ways to make itself known. And eventually, you reach a point where pretending takes more energy than being honest ever would. That's where something changes. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to make you question everything you've been doing. You start to wonder what would happen if you didn't fight it so much. If you didn't rush to hide every crack, every flaw, every piece of yourself that doesn't fit the image you've been protecting. And that thought, it's unsettling, because it goes against everything you've been conditioned to believe. Letting the mask slip feels like stepping into uncertainty. There's no script for it, no guarantee of how people will react, no assurance that you'll still be seen the same way. In fact, there's a good chance you won't. And that's the risk, isn't it? The risk of being understood differently, of being seen without the filter you've carefully maintained. But there's something else there too. Something quieter, less obvious, but impossible to ignore once you notice it. A sense of relief. Not complete, not overwhelming, but present. Because for once, you're not forcing yourself into a shape that doesn't quite fit. For once, you're not editing every reaction, every word, every expression to match what's expected of you. And maybe that's where healing actually begins. Not in the perfect control, not in the flawless performance, but in those imperfect moments where the mask slips just enough to let something real exist. Where you stop treating your own feelings like something to hide, something to fix, something to silence. It doesn't make things easier. It doesn't suddenly erase everything you've been carrying, but it changes the way you carry it. It shifts something inside you, something subtle but significant, something that makes the weight feel just a little less isolating, a little less permanent, a little less like something you have to face alone.